Hello and welcome back to my aerial video channel. And this 12-minute video is on spring Lake Erie beachcombing. I was actually going to call it hunting for turkey vultures or buzzards because they've come back from the south where they had migrated and are now back in the area, at least closer to where I live. But when I came out here and started looking for them, I didn't see any, so instead of calling it hunting the buzzards, I'm calling it springtime Lake Erie beachcombing. So we're going to get a look at the shoreline. The wind is at my back. I'm going to just pitch forward here, pitch the gimbal of the camera down a little bit so you can see, and we're going to take off and be going anywhere from 25 to 30 miles an hour as we head along the shoreline here. Things to be on the lookout for are, of course, some shoreline erosion, which happens during the winter time, and you'll see the various steps people have taken. Usually and mostly the people employ mountains of huge boulders and rocks down along the shore's edge to try and keep from losing valuable property line. Here you can see one property that has lost considerable amount this past winter. But the other thing that you'll see are structures jutting out into the lake. They're usually iron or steel I-beams. Then they come from boathouses, and a lot of these people who live on the shoreline of the lake have these ramps or steel rails that they can launch their boats from, so that instead of having to park their boat in a marina, they can just open up the boat storage area and then bring them out on one of these monorail systems that they have jutting out into the lake. And some of those are like 100 years old or close to it. So we're just going along the lake shore here about 25 to 30 miles an hour. You'll see that the lake is fairly calm. The wind was out of the south, so right close to the shoreline you see that there's hardly any effect of waves or anything like that. But if you look further out in the lake, you'll see some rippling, and that's generally what the lake looks like when there's a south wind. I should say that the wind was out of the southwest because we do have a bit of a tailwind here. And as we're coming up here, we actually went out about close to about 2 miles from where I took off. So we covered the distance fairly quickly. I only took it up to about 150 feet, so I was kind of concerned that I wasn't going to get a real far distance. I think I've had this particular UAV, the DJI Phantom 3 Advanced, I've had it out to 3 miles or more on more occasions, but that was over farmland, and probably better to. I'm so close to the housing that's inland from the lake that there's probably some Wi-Fi interference, and I don't quite make it to the point out here when back at my transmitter I got the RF signal low, picture image signal low, and so it disconnected and wound up doing a return to home. So even though I was at like 150 foot altitude, then as soon as it went into a return to home, because I live in an area where there's so many tall trees, I think I have my return to home height set to about 250 feet. And so as soon as it enters into a return to home, as soon as it turns around, it climbs up to a considerable height. And of course, back at the transmitter, I don't see that part of it until I get back into range. So it just turned around there. Again, you can look along the shoreline and see some of those people who have the I guess it's case of good things and bad things that are living along the lakeshore. It's nice, obviously, and it's very expensive property to have lakeshore property, but you always have to be worrying about lake erosion. But we're heading back now, and we've gone up to like 250 feet and be kind of slowly edging my way back down to 150 feet as I fly back towards the west here. And in the distance you can see the twin towers of the Perry nuclear power plant with the evaporate coming off of the one closest to the lake, and it's coming sort of in our direction, indicating a southwest wind. So now we are heading back into the wind, and when I looked at the speed coming back, we were only hitting maximum maybe like 22 miles per hour. So the going back into the wind slowed us down a bit, so I had to pitch forward a little bit more, and thus you can see the propeller images a little bit at the top of the screen as we're pitched forward quite a bit more, trying to make headway against this wind. Again, you can see the lake is for the most part fairly smooth due to the south wind, but again, if you look out a couple hundred yards or meters out onto the lake, you'll see that there's a little bit of ripples out there, and that's pretty typical indication that we have a south wind. So we're coming back, and I'm watching on my feedback on my Nvidia Shield tablet. That's a 7 or 8 inch tablet that I have mounted to the transmitter, on which I look at the video feed. And I didn't have a real good spot location because there's no, as you can see, there's no leaves on the trees yet to offer me any shade. So I was getting a lot of screen glare, even though I have a hood over the tablet, and I couldn't see the details that I wanted to see. For example, I was trying to look at what I was seeing and see if I was approaching myself to get an idea when I needed to stop, turn around, or make a landing or whatever, and totally went right past myself. And I'll point out where I'm at here as we're heading back along the shoreline. But it was really hard to see. It was, I could see it every once in a while. I would glance down and see that what my speed was, and as I said, we were slowed down to maybe 22 miles an hour as we're heading back against the wind. The one nice feature, I did make a flight after this using, instead of the DJI Go app, I used the Lychee app, which allows you to have your altitude and speed and distance and all of those parameters announced verbally by a voice coming out of the tablet, and that makes it so that you don't have to keep glancing and looking and trying to find those things. Okay, here we're coming up on my takeoff point. You see the little white car there on the left, and I'm sitting on a bench right in front of that, and at this point I'm still trying to see where the Phantom 3 is, and it was right about this point here that I started hearing it, because the wind was blowing the sound of the rotors back towards me, and I realized, well, I've already passed myself, so I might as well continue on going. So I'd gone about 2 miles to the east, and now we're heading back to the west, and I was sort of intent on going all the way up to where you see a break wall in front of us. That break wall is for a boat launch ramp in Perry Township, North Perry Township, and it was where they people who own boats can drive and put their boats into the lake, and that break wall keeps the most part of the large waves from upsetting their boats when they're trying to put them in or take them out of the water. But there must have been either more Wi-Fi interference in this direction, or more likely just the more trees and stuff in my way. So I didn't quite make it all the way to the break wall there before we started getting a weak signal, and I didn't want to go through that situation again. So we turned it around and started heading back towards where we took off. You can see a lot of these people here have invested, some of them, $100,000 or more dollars in fortifying the shorelines, just so that they don't lose any more property to erosion. It's one of the drawbacks, probably the chief drawback of owning a lakefront property is maintaining the erosion control that you have to have, just to make sure that your the land doesn't continuously fall off into the lake. So we're now getting back. You can see my the parking lot there in my little white car, and this place where we took off is Stanton Community Park. The slopes that you see right in front of us were featured in a past video where I showed the American bank swallows, and we'll be probably shooting those again this year. I'm pointing south here and getting a bit of the parking lot and the community park, which has quite a few soccer fields or soccer pitches on there for the area kids to play their soccer tournaments at. And as we're dropping down here, we're just making note of the wind. The wind was down, and this was one of the first nice days that I had a chance. That's why I hadn't posted a video for a month, as the weather was so bad. And anyways, we're glad you were able to stop back here and check out this video. Hopefully now that the weather has turned, and we'll be able to get some more videos up, maybe once a week, I hope. Thanks for stopping by and watching, and leave a comment if you feel so inclined. Come back again soon.